So, shall we talk about the Penguin? Well, okay, so we watched the whole season. The season wrapped up, so now we can talk about the whole season. I fucking loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I want to start the conversation by saying, like, we've talked in recent episodes about how characters are so essential to good television. And that's what's going on here in a big way, is you've really got, at the end of the day, would you say 3, maybe 4 major characters that you're following in the show? So I would say, obviously, Oz, Vic, Sophia, and maybe Oz's mom.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
As like the 4th. And all of them you understand pretty darn well from the first episode. And each episode you understand them better. And so you get their motivation early, and then that motivation deepens. So you have like more depth of understanding of what they're going through. And then it gets more complex. And so it's, instead of mystery boxing, instead of withholding information superficially or anything like that, there are revelations in the show. Things pop up that you didn't expect or you didn't know about, or so like there is information that comes to light. But it's, I remember Tarantino on like Charlie Rose many years ago said that a good story unfolds. And that's, I think, what's going on here is like, there's you can really understand all the causal effects from beginning to end of the season, and these revelatory plot points unfolds in a logical, sensible way all the way up until an ending.
No, Frankie. I think the best stories are where they artificially withhold information from you, so you have no fucking idea what's going on until the end, where they tell you, and it's just like, okay, thank you.
It was like it was basic all along, It was basic all along. And I remember thinking like, okay, so this is one of those stories where the main character's an awful guy, but we're gonna still find the humanity in him. We're still going to, he's our protagonist. We're stuck with him,
Yeah.
So we're going to root for him to some degree, but they were clever in that they never let you get too close to Oz. I think that even though he is our protagonist and we empathize with him and we're following him, I think that they stay on this side of the line of, we know he's a bad guy, and they have you rooting for Sophia and Vic.
Yeah.
They have you rooting for Oz's rival. I think pretty decisively. I don't think there's really a point in the show where you're like, I hope Sophia loses.
Yeah, she's definitely portrayed more sympathetically than Oz. Like, it never really, like, I don't think the show, like, even Breaking Bad, like, you're more sympathetic to Walter White, I would say. It never gets there with Oz. He is decidedly a bad person, and you know it every time. But it's still interesting. It's still interesting because you still see his motivations. You see, like with this flashback where what happens with his brothers and how that unfolds. It's sick, and it's like dark, but you get it. You get him. You get his almost.
And you do get him, but you never get him perfectly either, because he's weird and flawed, and humans are strange. And if we could summarize quickly for anybody who didn't watch the show, and I just make a side note here. I remember seeing a couple of comments last time we talked about this show that were kind of like, I don't like that show, or I resent that show, or I'm not going to watch that show, because it sounds like it's just trying to be The Sopranos, but it with some of the Batman dressing on it. So it's like, it's just kind of aping the franchise in order to do its own thing. And I'm like, yeah, but a good story is a good story. I mean, I don't, I'm just here to watch good TV at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah. And I think this feels more Gotham-y than just a Sopranos ripoff.
I've seen Batman stories that are like this. No?
Yeah.
I mean, it feels faithful, sort of.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely feels like the Penguin at the end of it. So, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So Oswald Cobb was a driver and he runs lounges for the Falcone family, who are rivals with the Maronis. These two kind of drug empires that have run Gotham for many, many years. They're kind of responsible for the majority of the police corruption and crime that's been going on in Gotham, as we all know from the Batman story. And so with the absence of Carmine, who dies in the Batman, we said all this last time, I'll recap anyway. Oz kills Carmine's son right off the bat. Spoilers. His sister, the guy, the son's sister, so Carmine's daughter, she's recently out of Arkham. Her name is Sophia Falcone.
Oh, baby.
And she doesn't really trust Oz. He used to be her driver. And we learn that she had a good relationship with her brother. While she was in Arkham, he was the only one who would visit. She was a pretty good kid that really wasn't involved in the crime family much at all. Her father kind of wanted her to take over it at some point. He thought of her as responsible, but she asked a few too many questions about how her mom died. Turns out her dad killed the mom, hanged her. So young Sophia actually found her dead mom. And when Sophia started snooping around, Carmine threw her into Arkham basically as a punishment, and she was absolutely tormented inside of Arkham. So now she's out. She's a bit twisted. She's kind of vengeful. Oz he's got aggressive ambition to basically topple these families, really just as like a vengeful, kind of rejected, underdog. He kind of tells himself that he's a big underdog. And yeah, he finds himself in the company of this young kid who tried to steal his hubcaps, who he kind of hires to become like his lackey. And this kid he's a good kid who has had a bad go since his dad died in the floods with the Riddler. It's clear that he wasn't done being fathered. This is somebody who's missing his dad. And Oz kind of steps into that. And the kid almost tries to make a clean getaway, and Oz sort of sneakily persuades him to stick by him and that he really cares about him. So Vic sticks by Oz through thick and thin. He'll kill people to save Oz. He's like family. They become close in that kind of way. Oz starts to get ambition to create a new street drug and sell that and make his own empire out of it. The Maronis try to get him. Some of them are in jail. He's able to overcome that. Sophia ultimately learns that Oz is an asshole and is against her and probably killed her brother. So they become rivals. And all along in the background, Oz has a mom who has dementia. And this character, first of all, is excellent. And second of all, I think it's the best performance in the show. Maybe more so than Colin Farrell. He's got this Oedipus complex with her. He loves his mom in a way he doesn't love anybody else. Yeah. And we learn that when he was a kid, of course, he had this limp and he was a fat kid and stuff. And he was kind of the runt of the litter. And he had these two older brothers that were like her shining stars. And he basically led them into a sewer drain and let them drown in there during a rainy night, just so he could be with his mom by herself and have her all to himself. And we learn in the final episode that she kind of always knew that that's what happened. Yeah. And she still sort of stuck by him, but she also hates him. So there's, and so he's trying to give her the world. I'm going to take over the crime family so that I can put you up in a penthouse on the top floor and give you nice jewelry, ma. She kind of hates him, and in her dementia, she's starting to talk about the sons. She's clearly never healed from the loss of her sons. There's a wonderful scene in this final episode where Sophia captures Oz and she kind of finds out about this whole thing with the sons. She wants Oz to admit to his mom that that's what happened because they never talked about it. And she's going to cut off one of her fingers if he doesn't do it. And it's clear that Oz will let his mom's fingers get cut off before he admits to what he did.
Yeah.
So even though she's the most important thing to him in the world, like the lie is more important.
Yeah. The fantasy. Well, because he's always like talking about like the people, the crime families that he grew up with. They were like the kings, and they're like he's always building up these fantasies, and he fancies himself as like the successor to that
man of the people, somebody,
man of the people,
the kind of criminal that would help people. And yeah, I'm a father figure to this community, and I think fathers because Oz didn't have a dad either, so Vic becomes fatherless. Oz never had a dad. He's kind of over-reliant on his mom. He wants to be the big brother. He never was the big brother, but he wants to be the big brother. He kind of topples both families, Sophia included. He ends up landing her back in Arkham, sadly, tragically. And the most upsetting part of the whole show is, so his mom ends up in a vegetative state, and he has a breakdown, basically a temper tantrum over it, because he wanted her to see what he had done and how he toppled everybody. Everything ultimately was for her pride in him. That's what he was seeking. So he's upset. So the victory's kind of robbed of him. And there's this nice scene where, and you know, they've got you by this point. Vic is a good kid. You want to see good things for him. Even if Oz is evil, you want to see Oz at least be nice to this kid, right? Which he has been. He's been a mentor to this kid. The kid gives a big speech about how Oz gave kids like me, a dignity. He gave us jobs. So he's building up Oz's fantasy. And they're sitting there on the bench at nighttime overlooking, the water and overlooking Gotham. And Vic is like, Oz says, "Hey, it's just you and me now, Vic. You've been there for me through thick and thin. You saw me at my lowest with my ma. Nobody knows about me and my ma like that. So thank you, Vic. I couldn't have done there's no way I would have won without you. You got me out of a bunch of tight spots." And he's like, "Hey, Oz, we're family." And so Oz is like, "Yeah, man, that's really hard." And he embraces him. And I do think as a viewer, you're like, "Oh, good. They should embrace." Like, I at least want to see that. And he grabs Vic by the throat and he chokes Vic, telling him like, "I'm sorry, like I'm going next. You can't come. I think you're great, but
you'll make
weakness.
me weak.
I can't be weak like this with family." And he just murders. I think he throws him in the water, right? And
he throws the ID in the water. He just leaves him.
The ID, right? Yeah, he throws his ID in the water, so he's just a corpse that people can't identify easily.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't sick enough, he gets his vegetative mom up to the top floor of that penthouse, overlooking Gotham in her sick state. And there's this prostitute character that he's been seeing throughout the series, and he makes her dressed up like the mom, in this dress that she used to go to like lounges in, and he dances with the prostitute dressed up like his mom and is like, "Tell me you're proud of me," and stuff.
Yeah. And this is after like the mom has a conversation with him. It's like, if I'm ever like in like a state where I can't take care of myself, I want you to like basically euthanize me. And so this is kind of another like rebuke. I mean, it's like like, no, it's like, you are mine. you are a possession of mine.
Yeah, I'm not killing. Yeah, right. Yeah, kind of like Dahmer in that way, where he's like, "I just wanted to own them,"
Yeah. So instead of respecting her wishes one last time, it's like, no, these are my wishes. It's my world.
Yeah, ruthlessly selfish. And in the very final moment, the bat signal hits the sky, and that's that. Batman's not mentioned any other time. I think just in the prologue, which works. There's one scene. There's like a big explosion of the drug sewer that they're in, where it was a big enough event that you got to believe Batman would have been involved.
He had to come by.
he would have been involved.
He's busy.
He's so busy. I was delighted that this was not a show about how he got his first umbrella.
He does have a top hat by the end.
Or why he this is where he got his first long cigarette.
Oh yeah.
They do tease the idea of him becoming mayor, which was kind of clever.
And I can't praise Colin Farrell enough for this role. Like he does disappear. Like you forget that it's him. He disappears in the role. You just see the Penguin.
The actress who played Sophia said that she spent so much time with Oz. It was like very strange, because apparently like in between takes and stuff, he'll continue talking like Oz. And so she was like, I really didn't know Colin. I knew Oz. Like seeing Colin was weird. I remember that was when I was, it's not at all the same, but I remember when I was on ABO, I'd spend a whole day in that mask and people would treat me like this like kind of strange animal. And then I'd take off the mask later and they're like, "This is strange." I like that the name, the Penguin, it was derogatory.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's just that's how he's known, derogatorily, and that's very funny. I mean, not funny, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, and aren't you glad that this was actually about the Penguin?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that there's not other characters here that are very interesting, and I'm totally compelled by them, and I would maybe be interested in seeing them in future things. But if you're going to make a show called The Penguin, it ought to be about the Penguin. And that's not always the case with these sorts of things. But I tell you, I went from the Batman thinking like, okay, it's cool, but it didn't really work in the end for me. And it's definitely not necessarily like excited about a sequel. To now, like you show me this, I'm like, oh, can't wait until the next thing that you make, because that if you can keep going in that direction, and make sure that whatever stories you're telling start and complete. Not everything has to be a cliffhanger. Like the seeds you plant should grow into fruit, and then call it a day.
Yeah,
and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it does make me excited for more Matt Reeves Batman, and I wonder. It's a weird thing, because I do think this is at least critically acclaimed, and everyone's talking about it, and people like it. And it's weird that they're like developing another Batman in another universe. It just feels weird.
This is the best thing I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like. It's so nice. It's so nice to be like, ooh, it's Monday, I get to watch the show, as opposed to like, I gotta watch the show.
Yeah, I mean, let me look at the things that I've seen this year with. Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. I think that's all I have to say about it.
No, it's a good story. Just watch it.
I've loved every minute of it, even when I wasn't loving it, and I just feel so grateful. But I won't miss the suit, and I won't miss the fucking voice. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.